G'day you mob, what's going on? I'm Pete, your host of Aussie English. Welcome to this episode of the Goss, where I sit down with my old man, with my dad, and we talk about the week's news. Except today, we have a bit of a chin wag, we have a bit of a chat, but we didn't actually get onto the news. We had a bit too much fun talking about a whole bunch of other topics that we find interesting, and so yeah, I'm just going to give you the full episode. It's about an hour long, and it is a complete mixed bag, okay? A mixed bag as in a mixed bag of lollies, right? You get many different types of lollies when it's a mixed bag. In this episode, you get many different subjects instead of lollies. So we talk about craft beers and Aussie beer culture. We talk about sailors and how they used to drink watered down grog, which was, I believe, beer or rum that was watered down. We talk about cannon fodder, right? And going to war, what it was like back in the day, and how Hollywood doesn't necessarily represent going to war and, you know, those scenes out of Vikings and everything that accurately. We talk about Aussie movies and pop culture, Australian and British self-deprecating humour and how it differs from that of North America, both America and Canada. We talk about capitalism, specialty handcrafted culture in today's day and age where people are obsessed with unique things as opposed to mass-produced things. We talk about reality TV, and then lastly, we talk about Elon Musk, electric cars, and going to Mars, right? So anyway, I hope it's an interesting episode for you guys. There's a lot in there, a lot of different vocab, expressions, lots of different cultural stuff. So it's chock-a-block, full to the brim of interesting content. And yeah, without any further ado, smack the kookaburra and let's get into it. All right, Dad, welcome to this episode of the Goss.
Hey,
beer
Pete.
time.
Yeah, beer time. Good to be here. What have we got here? Dark Deeds, midwinter. Well, that's appropriate.
I know.
Vanilla porter.
Why do they suggest that you have dark beers during winter?
Because I think they're sort of thick and creamy and sweet, which goes with sitting in front of the fireplace and warming yourself up, rather than that sort of Pilsener style of clear, dry sort of beer that you would have super cold. And look, obviously in Australia we drink all beers cold, but certainly in Europe a lot of their lagers and things they'll drink warm.
Why is that? It's Europe too. Everything should be cold, shouldn't it?
Well, you know,
Anyway.
well, it's the old gag about people say you should drink wine at room temperature. But that was wine at room temperature in the 18th century in France.
Yeah.
So it was about 10 degrees, which is just a bit above refrigeration temperature.
Well, I didn't realise how much wine differs today from back in the day. You know, you watch TV series like Game of Thrones, and although obviously that's not historically
Do you want to do 50-50?
accurate, yeah, we'll do 50-50.
Oh, you're not going to taste anything after this.
Oh, okay, well, I'm going to join my first then. It's a little lighter. Yours is pretty dark. Yeah, I'm glad I'm going this one first.
Cheers.
All right, cheers, Dad. But
Not going to poison you. You're saved.
Watching Game of Thrones, you see how much wine they put away, and you're just like, how are these guys not
low
just
alcohol.
permanently smashed? Yeah, it was much more watered down. They mixed in spices.
Yes.
And
it was the same with beer. Beer was traditionally low alcohol as well.
Well, wasn't it drunk by monks?
Monks and sailors.
Yeah.
Beer.
Well, that
and,
was rum, wasn't it?
and-
Grog,
well,
where we got grog from.
But grog was just watered down rum. But they used to take barrels of beer as well. Particularly on long trips, because there was enough alcohol in it to act like a preservative, so it didn't go off. And water was in rotting barrels, and it went off really quickly, whereas beer didn't.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy to think that sailors were just toasted, a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Although they
Well,
probably only
I
had
think you
rations at the end of the day,
I think you had to be.
Well, didn't they quite often end up rebelling or...
Apologies in advance for the slurping while I do this. You've got to slurp black beer. It's just sort of the done thing.
Yeah, almost like a coffee, huh? But it's pretty funny that they would often rebel if there wasn't any grog or if their rations were cut.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because they'd be like, this is the only thing I have to look forward to.
Exactly.
Every single day.
Getting half pissed at night was the only thing I had to look forward to.
Well, it would have been such a shitty job. You can't imagine. I was watching a thing on the VOC. I don't know how to say that in Dutch, but it's the Dutch East Indian Company.
Yeah.
And how you would potentially end up working for the VOC back in the day. And I think that the company had set up back in places like Holland or the Netherlands, men that were effectively used to convince poor farmers to
send their sons off.
Yeah, to become
send their
sailors.
8-year-old
And so they would tell them, this is a way for you guys to make money. You're going to make loads of money. It's going to be an amazing experience. You get to see the world. You get to sail all over the place. And it was some ridiculous number of them just die.
Yeah.
And they quite often get... I think they get like hoodwinked. I don't know where we get that expression from.
Yeah, there's
I don't know
one
if
to
that's
look up.
related
We'll keep that one for next time. Look up, put us
hoodwinked.
Yes,
but they would get tricked where they would get them drunk and then effectively kidnap them.
Oh well,
before they would actually be able to change their
certainly the way
mind.
that I'm not sure about other nationalities, but the British Navy worked that way for centuries. Of just going off and going to the local pubs and just rounding up the drunks. And
the weird thing is, wouldn't you think as a sailor or as the captain, for instance, that maybe it's not the best idea to have sobering up drunk people as my crew on board a ship?
But look, they were
just beggars can't be choosers.
Yeah,
they needed
sailors,
anyone.
the sort of unskilled, although they became skilled reasonably quickly, or they died. But unskilled sailors were really just literally cannon fodder when they were in the Navy, who were actually out there fighting battles and things. They just wanted people to run the ship, do all the manual labour on the ship, and that was all, and fight if they had to.
Disposable, huh?
Yeah, they were fairly disposable.
Do you want to explain what cannon fodder is?
Cannon
Because I remember
fodder,
when I first heard that when I was younger as a kid watching movies, I always thought that was the stuff the cannon shot. Or fodder, stuff that you would feed the cannons. Because fodder means food that's given to cattle and livestock.
Well, cannon fodder was just it was not for sailors so much, but more just foot soldiers back in the sort of 16th, 17th, 18th century, when you just had to have the team that had the most soldiers won.
Because there was a limiting factor on how quickly they could
reload, and how much ammunition they had, and they weren't very accurate. So you literally just got all these people and just charge at the opposition, and they'll charge at us, and we'll just see how many we can shoot down.
Why was it such a gentleman's thing back then with that too? Because you watch films like, is it The Patriot? That's the one with Mel Gibson.
Yeah.
In America, where it's the period where there's not a civil war. There's a war between Britain.
The War of Independence.
The War of Independence. So this is the
1776.
Yeah, and you have the British and the French involved, and the Americans, but they have still at that period, obviously one-shot rifles that take about a minute to reload with I don't even know the name of the thing that you would push the ball down into the chamber. You'd have to put the gunpowder in the top of the gun and then have a wick that then went down, and you had a delay on when you fire it, but it takes like a second for it to shoot.
A good musketeer back in those times could shoot and reload to shoot again 3 times in a minute. So it would take 20 seconds.
Jesus.
That's a really good one.
Yeah.
Your average person, I've tried it. Your average...
Where?
It was an exhibition thing, something, and they just said, we'll show you how to do it. Then, all right, I'll have a go at this.
Yeah.
2 minutes and I was still a klutz, and the guys just, it just becomes such routine.
For sure.
And they use their mouth as the third hand to hold bits, and whereas I was hopeless. But I would have been dead after the first shot.
Yeah, but the weird thing for me watching those films is seeing the way in which opposing sides that are at war fight in an honourable and orderly manner back then. Why was that held to? Because you would imagine that if you knew anything about game theory of, like how things compete in order to win, or what happens as a result of
break
competing.
the rules and you win.
Exactly. Why would you not just be like, screw waiting for them to have their shot?
Yes.
Let's just take another shot when we can take it. Although I guess you get mayhem and disorder.
Yeah.
But
look,
still,
I think there were, that those really strict rules, I think, are a bit of an invention of television, Hollywood invention. But there was certainly not so much rules, but established processes for the way a battle would occur. In that, we'll meet at 8 o'clock in the morning on this field, and the 2 generals would be sitting on opposite sides of the field up on hills, and sort of waving flags and pointing to people to where they go. And we'll fight for half an hour and see what happens.
Yeah.
And then the one that's got the most men standing wins, and we clean up the dead and start again tomorrow.
And a big no-no was taking out the officers, right?
Oh, yeah.
They were effectively untouchables because the men needed to gather around them. But again, you would think...
Yeah, just shoot the general on top of the hill.
Well, or even the officers organising the men, and you're going to have mayhem. People aren't going to be organised. They're going to fall apart, run off, or just
they used to the senior officers would take their wives and their family, and they'd have these little picnics on top of the hill watching these battles. It is. It's a bit bizarre.
Yeah, so cannon fodder was just effectively that you had a shitload of soldiers or men who were effectively used to draw the fire from the cannons, right, to distract them, and they were disposable, and then after the fact, you could charge in and take them out or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to slow down on this beer. My God.
This could get more interesting in an hour's time.
I think we've done one where we've had
we haven't done one
on
half
an empty
pissed.
stomach.
I've seen some vloggers and podcasters who do that, just as a bit of
Joe Rogan,
entertainment.
Gets stoned or has a few whiskeys, and
there's a guy who
I don't know how he keeps it together.
I won't name him, but if you find him, there's a couple of guys who used to do. They worked for a camera store in Canada. And they were all, they do a lot of online reviews and things like that. But every year they would do their best of the best camera of the year, the best. But they would, after everything, they would take another drink, and by the end of it, they were just falling about laughing.
Have you seen the interview on YouTube? There's a channel that's like the Hot Wing Challenge or something.
No.
It's a channel where a guy effectively he
Yeah.
interviews people, all sorts of famous people, chefs, actors, actresses, whoever it is, but he makes them eat progressively spicier hot
so you
sauce
go from
on
the
his chicken
through
wings
to the
or the buffalo
suicide
wings.
chicken wings.
Yeah, and they see how far they can get. And so there've been a whole bunch of interesting
Well, one of
characters.
the best things you can do if you're eating hot sauce on things is drink beer.
Well, he'd probably just get given water.
Beer is better than water, apparently.
Yeah. But I mean, he's not going to try and make it easier for you.
No.
But at least he does it with you. That's the good thing.
Well, yeah, but if he's used to it.
So, do you think that there are any of these periods in time where we see these wars or these fights break out and they're displayed on TV, in TV series and in Hollywood films that are actually accurately portrayed, or do you think most of them are sensationalized, romanticized?
Well, I think and look, it depends, and I can't tell you some that are accurate and others that aren't off the top of my head, but I think mostly that sort of Hollywood, and we're using Hollywood as an example of mainstream American movies, but British movies, European movies are probably doing similar things, where they're trying to portray historically accurate things in general, but the fiction comes in relation to the particular characters and the role, and that you've got.
I had no idea that Vikings wore so much leather and chains.
Yeah, of course they did.
It's like but as in like in the TV shows, it's like these guys look like they're out of some dominatrix dungeon.
Oh yeah,
and they're all in these weird that doesn't look like it's effective at all at defending you, but it looks cool.
Yeah,
and the back scabbards where they have the sword over the back, that was never used by anyone unless you were carrying your sword. On the road, and you wouldn't
carry
it on your waist.
You wouldn't carry it into battle like that. You'd carry it in your hand.
Well, you couldn't pull it out.
Exactly.
The sword's too long for you to extend your arm.
Yeah.
The other one is having a quill of arrows on your back as well.
A quiver?
A quiver of arrows on your back is totally unviable, again, for the same reason. You have to do this huge movement of leaning backwards, grabbing it, pulling it out of a straight, jacket, a little thing that it's being held in.
They used to wear them on the hip.
Yeah, just like the sword thing, funnily enough.
Yeah.
You would imagine, you're pulling these two long, straight things out of a pocket. It's going to be probably ideal to have it in the same place.
And some of I think the really big swords, like the ancient British, particularly Scottish swords, these huge things that you had to fight with two hands.
Yeah.
You just had to carry that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you couldn't put it anywhere.
Well,
the things were 5 foot long.
I've seen them in films at least where
A
you
metre
see
and a half long.
that they have someone help them pull the sheath off it, right? Like
Yeah,
they're holding it
yeah,
with the sheath on it, and
exactly.
someone has to like lift
Yeah.
the sheath off it. But I would feel like that'd be a massive disadvantage carrying that huge thing.
It would, but
into
it's
battle.
a huge advantage if you've got it and you're strong
you're
enough
big.
to be able to use it. Yeah, and that was the thing, is that these were,
It'd be pretty terrifying.
They would be pretty terrifying. Anybody who can carry one of those, you'd steer clear of in battle, I'd reckon.
Yeah,
It's
but
like
at
the
same
battle
time,
axes.
After doing fencing when I was younger, doing sword fighting and doing saber, you realise how easy it is for just the flick of the wrist.
Yes.
I could have the sword at your head and literally flick my wrist sideways 90 degrees, and I can chop at your arm.
Yeah, but
in
that's
a
something
split
that weighs
second.
about 200 grams.
True.
This is something that weighs 4 or 5 kilos.
Yeah, well, that would be insane. But like with standard swords, whenever you see those sword fights and there's
rapier
huge
swords,
movements that people make, lifting their arms above their head, you're like, your entire body's exposed.
Yes, you're gone.
And that person just has to flick their wrists, and you'd be
Well, you look
gone.
at. I mean, obviously you were a fencer, but anybody who was not a fencer, including me, but you look at fencing competitions, and a fight in fencing, can last a tenth of a second.
Yeah,
it's just bang, first touch,
well,
and you're gone.
The average saber fight was less than 10 seconds for sure.
Yeah, because it's not that.
Because all you need to do is make contact,
and it
although
was
it's not you're
all of
killing the
the
person,
all of the
but-
time is really just avoidance.
Yeah.
It's not.
Well, it's hesitation.
You're not clashing swords.
No.
Like the old-fashioned pirate, Errol Flynn movies.
And when you did that, it would usually be there's a definitive end to the
you would block and
clashing
then
with the swords.
you'd
So
parry
it's
and
one of
thrust.
you has blocked and the other one has countered it and then attacked.
Yeah, it's
and
parry
it's
and
over.
thrust, and that's it.
Yeah, there's no block, 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 block.
until you're exhausted.
Yeah. Oh man, that always reminds me of The Princess Bride.
Oh,
that
yes.
movie.
Yes.
That was a good film.
One of the great movies. If you haven't seen
Yeah.
The Princess Bride, as an old Australian pop journalist used to say,
so
do
many-
yourself a favour.
There are so many pop cultural references from that film that still go round, right?
yeah,
Like that. I
exactly.
don't think that word means what you think
Yeah,
it means.
I know.
Those memes that keep going around online.
Yes, yeah.
But yeah, it is fascinating how
Like
much
Clueless. Sorry, Clueless is another movie like that. Another sort
Yes.
of popular movie from the 80s.
this was with
where-
Alicia
Silverstone.
Silverstone.
Yeah. And there are some sayings that were written into the script of that have just become. They were written in the script that had never been used before, and they became popular culture. And it was sort of almost like when you watch the film 10 years later, you go, of course everybody says that. Yeah, and the best is whatever.
Really? That's where it came
that
from,
whatever. Yeah, that was invented by the script writers for that movie, and they did a whole bunch of those. And you just sit there and go, oh, that's where all this stuff comes from. So it literally is sort of art defining reality, not trying to represent it.
There's quite a lot of that in Australian history, right? Or Australian pop culture. We get a lot from movies like Crocodile Dundee and The Castle. And I guess you never know which
That's
movies...
not a knife. This is a knife.
You never know which movies are going to do it at the time. And it's only after years later that you realise that actually had a really big impact on the... Australian zeitgeist, the Australian culture, as a movement. It's weird though, because it seems like films like The Castle are just not made anymore. I mean, I don't know if I've lost touch.
There are probably a few, but not as often. And there were some of that classic period of Australian cinema from the 70s to the 90s, where there were probably 5 or 6 movies a year that have become sort of really popular classic Australian movies.
Well, even the early 2000s, right? Movies like Kenny and the Nugget, they still had that unique Australian humour to them that I again, maybe my finger's off the pulse and I haven't been watching too many Australian films.
And I think some of it now is going into television series rather than making movies.
They've realised that's where the money is.
I've just discovered, and I don't know where I've been for the last 4 years, but I've just discovered Jack Irish.
I don't think I've seen it.
No, do yourself a favour. No, it's a Melbourne-based TV series. They've done 2. I think the first series 1 was 2016. I think they made 3 sort of mini movies as sort of little pilots, and then they've made a series in 2016 and then another one in 2018, the second series. But it's full of well-known Australian actors who are all out of Melbourne.
Yeah.
And so you just sit there. Guy Pearce, who's an obviously a world-famous Australian actor.
He went to my school!
Yeah, he did. And so he's the main star of it. But it's one of those things. It's a series of sort of murder mystery problems to solve. But it has that Australian larrikin humour in it as well,
Yeah.
where you just sit there chuckling, even though sort of it's not blood and gore sort of stuff, but there's this mystery of, well, who's killing these people, and at the same time you're laughing at the interactions of the characters, and that was what a lot of those movies were like. They were semi-serious drama in the background story, but they were treated with a sense of humour that was classically Australian.
Well, there's a really good one, isn't there, where a guy, I've forgotten what the film's called. There's a famous Australian actor now who's in a lot of big movies, but he's sort of comedic. He was a comedian originally, but he's in this film where effectively he's owning a failing farm, and I think he works out that if he just kills people and puts them into the soil, the fertilizer that they're going to sell, it's an easier way of making money.
I haven't seen that one.
And so it's incredibly black humour. There's another one. There's a New Zealand one where there's zombies, right? Or the zombie sheep.
Yeah.
I think that one. And you just kind of like this. I feel like this would not be made anywhere else. It's just Australia and New Zealand have this sort of sense of humour.
Bizarre sense of humour.
But I feel like a sort of nostalgia for those sorts of films because it seems like they're... And again, I'm not sure. Maybe I'm out of the loop. But it feels like they're not being made anymore. Kenny was a classic. The toilet cleaning guy with a lisp who, was effectively just a simple guy living a simple, classic, tradie Australian life. And you get to just follow him around like it was almost like a mockumentary.
Yeah.
Like a doco, but it's fake.
Exactly.
And he's having trouble, taking
Portaloos. That guy plays a policeman in this series, Jack Irish, as well.
Okay.
So, he's and again, he's straight. It's not a comedic role.
Yeah.
But the way the dialogue is written, it comes out comedic.
Yeah.
So, and that's that Australian. It's a bit British as well, but that Australian sense of humour where it's ironic dialogue. So rather than set up gags and trying to be funny, there's this sort of ironic dialogue where they're poking fun at themselves, this sort of self-deprecating humour, or poking fun at their friends as well. So,
do you think Americans don't really get that?
No, they don't take themselves too seriously.
Why do you think that is? Because I assume we got it from the British.
I love Canada and I love Canadians and Americans.
We got it from the British because the Brits do it quite a lot. They take the piss out of themselves.
They take the piss out of themselves.
And so do we. But America and Canada were both quote unquote founded by the British.
Yeah.
And so, you kind of like, how did the humour and self-deprecation get lost on them when they're from the same stock?
Yeah. It's weird, but no, I think, with all due respect, and when you start a sentence like that, there's an insult coming, but America and Americans just take themselves too seriously.
What do you think that is, though? Why do you think they do that?
Look, I think it's part of, this is complete hypothetical.
I haven't looked into this.
I haven't looked into this. No, and who knows? You're never going to do a sensible study of this. But I just think it's this. We fought to create this country, so I'm sure there was a lot of
America fought to create their country.
Yeah, and I think there was a lot of anti-British sort of sentiment in that first century of America. Certainly the first 70 or 80 years between the War of Independence and the American Civil War. I think there was a lot of anti-British thing there. So, and it's a general feeling that I have, and I've been to America, I don't know, about 40 times now, and I've lots of American friends and relatives who I love dearly, but I think this is this general feeling that Americans think they were born in the greatest country in the world.
Well, you hear it. It's weird, though, because you hear them say that.
It's a parochialism.
You never hear anyone else say that.
No.
You never hear that touted by Canadians, by British people, by Australians. We never say, oh, but you remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. This is the best country.
And the usual line that I have with that when people, and I joke with my American friends and relatives that they were born with a stamp on their birth certificate that says you were born in the greatest country in the world, and they keep saying that for the rest of their lives.
Well, to pause you there, you would imagine if you were, you don't need to tell anyone.
No, exactly. And so my usual line to them is, no, you weren't. Go to New Zealand. And they look at me and I say, well, I'm allowed to do that. I'm not being parochial because I'm not a New Zealander. But seriously, go to New Zealand. It is the greatest country in the world.
Well, I guess you have to ask them how you're measuring it.
Yeah.
Because a lot of it is going to be the fact that in a country like America, you can be from anywhere in the world. And Australia, Canada and Britain, anywhere in the world, have no English, be dirt poor, and be able to claw your way up and become a millionaire, which has occurred repeatedly.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
You see so many examples of, and I think that's why they tout it all the time as being such the land of the opportunity and the best country in the world, because anyone can make it.
The only
American dream.
Yeah,
the American dream. We never hear that. The Australian dream.
The Australian dream is the quarter-acre block and the Holden and the Labrador.
The Australian dream is to have your ute.
Yeah, the ute.
Be able to check out a few, kangaroos jumping down the street and to sink a few tinnies with your mates on the weekend.
With your mates playing footy on the weekend. No, but I think there's an element of this parochialism related to the word freedom.
Yeah.
And I think that is the major difference between Australia. Canada is very similar to Australia rather than America, and obviously they're very close to America geographically, but I think that idea that they fought for their freedom, they fought off tyranny to create their country, creates this sort of parochialism. And it's not they call it patriotism, but I'm as patriotic as most Americans in that I love Australia. But there's a parochialism which is different, which is that we live in the greatest country in the world. And so it sort of becomes insular. Whereas, and I think that affects the sense of humour. Because
you can't poke fun at them.
You can't poke fun at them. You can't poke fun at America. You can't poke fun at Americans because this is serious shit. We fought for the country that we have. And the thing is, once you start that, you have to keep believing it. Because if you don't believe it, the house of cards collapses.
But it's interesting when they keep saying it, and you can see that a lot of Americans, at least, based on what you see on TV, whether or not that's an accurate representation of the average American, you can see that they believe that, but I don't feel like the rest of the world believes that, and we're not falling for the rhetoric that they use. And so it's weird where I feel like you kind of like getting up and saying,
particularly in the last
I'm
4 years.
I'm the best at XYZ in front of a crowd, and they're all clearly not buying it.
Yeah.
And yet you keep going.
And it's that old thing of, I used to be a high school teacher, and, for years I was telling people, show me, don't tell me.
Yeah.
Don't tell me what you know. Show me what you know and show me what you can do. You being able to just spout facts doesn't help. But and it's that same thing of, we're the greatest country in the world. But don't tell me that. Show me that. Give me examples. But it's very difficult.
It blows
and I don't
my
want
mind.
to keep running down America.
Not to pick on America, but it is such a weird country to me, at least as an outsider, because they do have so much, but at the same time, the average person has so little compared to places like Canada, New Zealand, Australia, Britain, or any other non-English speaking countries that are, in Europe, for example, where you're just like, you guys, the average person, doesn't have good healthcare. And if they do, all their healthcare, usually for them and their entire family, is tied to their job.
Yeah, it comes
so
as a
don't
benefit.
you lose your job. Yeah. I can't imagine living in that kind of a situation, I guess. Like, it scares me. I would love to live in America, but I fear breaking my leg, or getting ill, and it just receiving a bill that just says that'll be $50,000.
Yeah, well, the irony is that America spends more dollars on medical research and improving healthcare than any other country in the world by a long way. But that doesn't trickle down to your average American.
Well,
and, if you, regardless of cost, if you have a severe medical problem, it's probably the country that you do want to have it in.
Yeah.
Yes, Australian medical system and New Zealand and Canada and Britain and things are fantastic, but the leading medical researchers in general are coming from the United States, and there's really a lot of stuff that comes out of other Western countries, but per capita they're doing pretty bloody well, but it doesn't trickle down in terms of the healthcare system.
Well, that's the irony,
to
right?
their
Because
citizens.
you're like, you guys have the best and most brilliant minds in the world. You have arguably, the best system in the world for a lot of these things in terms of, democracy and everything. But you have probably, I don't know what the stats would be, but it would be a significant proportion more people in jail than I think any other country in the world, let alone compared to Australia.
Well, certainly the countries that we know
capita.
about. I suspect that China has more.
Yeah.
But we don't know about them. But,
and
North Korea.
homeless people.
Yes.
You see these TV reports in places like San Francisco, and you're like,
higher proportion of people in poverty than many other Western countries.
How the hell have you guys not worked out how to solve this yet?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there's one homeless guy in Ocean Grove.
Yeah. Well, and he's on the Bellarine Peninsula. He just sort of wanders the peninsula. How you going, mate?
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure he's listening to Aussie English.
Yeah, exactly. And his multicoloured coat and his shepherd's crook, walking around, and his dog
swearing at his dog.
Yeah,
damn it, Steve.
Yeah. That's what the dog's doing.
It is interesting. I wonder what Americans make of coming to Australia and walking around the streets of somewhere like Melbourne and thinking, where are the homeless people?
Yeah.
I mean, there are homeless
people.
But compared to somewhere like if you left LA, you know, say Joe Rogan, you know, he comes from LA and comes to Melbourne. I've heard him quite a few times just say, why aren't we like Australia? Let's be like Australia, and bring up gun policy and everything else.
I know.
Yeah. So are you going to go the rest of that beer? Or do
you no, we can swap over if you want.
Oh, Jesus.
I won't taste the bloody thing after this. But no, it's not too bad. It's better than that crap you had the other day.
6.2.
$25 can of beer.
Jesus. Yeah, we had one the other day that was similar to this in colour, but it had been aged in a bourbon oak barrel.
Yeah.
And
it tasted like a cross between chocolate and
was
bourbon.
really sweet.
And it was about 13% alcohol.
13% alcohol, which is probably, 4 or 5 times the usual beer?
Oh, yeah, it's
standard
3.
beer. And these are IPAs, so these are pretty strong. Or stouts. This one's a stout, isn't it?
This one's an IPA. That's 6%, I think, so that's half the other one.
Yeah.
What's this? Quadzilla. Quadruple hop pale ale. Quadruple hop, does that mean it's got 4 times the amount of hops in it? I presume it does.
I'd say that means it has probably 4 different hops.
Screams. I love reading this shit on craft beers. It's sort of like your Yobbo's version of wine wanking.
Mm-hmm.
Screams from the street at an unstoppable monster of hops.
Yeah.
Kveik. I can't. Kveik. No, it's obviously a Eastern European word. Pale ale with a burdensome amount of oat that's hopped beyond recognition. This monster takes us all hostage. Our only defence, the juice division, commanded by a House Kveik yeast blend, and backed up with a heavy barrage of lush tropic hits from rare mythical hops like Jester from the UK, Samba from the USA, and NZH 107, an experimental variety from New Zealand, like tearing apart an island and devouring it like it's fruit. Sorry, fruit salad. I'm getting into the bit that's sort of here. Have a look at this.
Yeah,
it's very dark purple.
So anyway. This one's a Dark Deeds one, and you've got some Quadzilla.
Quadzilla.
Sorry, forgive me.
You know it's a good IPA. You can't see
it's cloudy.
through it.
Yeah.
Either that it's made in Adelaide from water from the Murray River.
It looks like a cider.
Oh, it's very citrusy.
I like that one.
I'm not sure about the number of the... Oh, they made that out of lemon juice.
Yeah. It's good.
Yeah,
that one's good. This one's a bit strong. Do you want to talk about that? Kel said that before we came in here because we were like, do we have some beers for this one? What is it
you're going to be pissed by the time you get halfway through.
Oh, well, she's probably not wrong. You know,
I've got a bit more weight than you. I can last another beer.
Making it so big today because it's really interesting, and this is something I've noticed more recently. Capitalism has kind of gone through a bunch of stages, right? We had the end of the 1800s where everything started becoming... you know, all these factories, the Industrial Revolution. Factories, we had all these huge machines. And then I think what you would have gone through the early 1900s to mid-1900s where everything was mass-produced and everyone wanted, you know, really commercialized things. They wanted to know...
Consistency and
I'm
cheap.
going to get my consistency. Yeah, so you had... At the same time, you had restaurants like McDonald's and all these other huge chains pop up because they could make sure, you know, we'll have the same experience.
Mac, you know what's going to be wherever you go.
Yeah, exactly. But it seems interesting that we've kind of gone through that. I felt like that was what it was like in my childhood, or maybe the tail end of it. And now it seems to be that we've all jumped on the emo, goth, hipster bandwagon where everyone actually now wants to express their uniqueness.
Everybody wants to be so unique that they're all the same.
Yeah,
which amazes me about that whole hipster thing.
I mean, that's sort of tongue-in-cheek, but in a way with this sort of stuff where now there is actually... a huge market for small
and different
mom and pop, unique, you know, organic, locally crafted, locally farmed and produced products. It seems like and the Americans say this with their mispronunciation of the word, the riches are in the niches, and Aussie English is somewhat like that to some extent as well. It's not mass-produced, all English, let's throw our arms as wide as possible and collect as many listeners as possible. It's much more, this is your very specific
Let's get
kind
the
of thing.
ones who will follow us. And
Do you feel like it's made a massive change like that?
It has been, but it's been evolutionary. It's been
way?
evolutionary. I think certainly when I was a kid, and this is talk about 1960, so 60 years ago, and we'll talk about beer. Not that I was drinking beer 60 years ago, but my father and grandfather were. Yeah, exactly. My father and grandfather were.
You're an Australian. You came out running.
I came out running. Yeah, exactly. Give me a fucking beer. You drank. Yeah, there really was 4 varieties of beer, and they were all produced by the same manufacturer in Melbourne. In New South Wales, they were
You would
Carlton.
have had Melbourne bitters.
There was Melbourne Bitter,
Carlton Draft.
Victoria Bitter, Carlton Draft, and Foster's Lager.
Okay, yeah.
And there was Abbott's Lager, which was another version of Foster's, and
Yeah.
it just came from a different brewery. But they're all owned by Carlton United Breweries. And then that was in Victoria. In New South Wales, there was Tooheys beer.
Yeah.
And in Queensland, there was Forex.
Yeah.
And why do they call it Forex? Because Queenslanders can't spell beer. Boom, boom.
You got lit up, Queenslanders.
The other one, the other gag for that is, look, the irony is that I don't reckon you can tell the difference between Carlton Draft, Tooheys, and Forex. But the other gag
beer
with Melbourne
connoisseur
drinkers
who
in
knows his
particular,
worst beers.
would say that they're calling it Forex because they're ashamed to call it beer. But that's just a gag. It's no better or worse than any of the others. But that was basically it. So that was down the eastern seaboard, and in South Australia there was another brewery, Cooper's, which is still around.
Yeah.
Don't drink Cooper's. But
They went full woke, right?
Yeah.
Woke? Or did they go... They were the complete opposite,
they're the
right?
complete opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Cooper's family, which still owns that company,
Yeah.
they were donating huge amounts of money to the no vote on gay marriage in Australia.
Yeah.
And so
There'll be a lot of religious listeners, but I guess the basic message here is that the average Australian was very pro allowing gay marriage to come through, or at least not allowing the churches to have a monopoly on marriage.
Yeah.
And it was very weird to see such a big organisation throw a lot of money behind the no vote.
Yeah, and I think regardless of where you sit
result.
on the particular issue,
Yeah.
and everybody, we live in a free country, even though we don't fight for it, but and freedom of speech is one thing. But when you have large corporations effectively propping up political votes, that's something that just isn't done in Australia very often.
Usually.
And so usually, it
Unless
has
they're
been-
mining companies.
Yeah, well, let's not go there.
Clive Palmer.
Yeah. Well, he'll be in jail soon anyway. But I'm not allowed to
After
talk
he
about
sues
that
me.
because, exactly. Where was I? Yeah, so there were really a few beers, and then it became the sort of thing that every now and then you'd get a new beer that would pop up, and Carlton United would buy it, or Tooheys would buy it.
So they
and
get acquired.
They would keep it running along, but it would just be acquired and become part of the mainstream.
Well, this is Coke, right?
And-
With Fanta and
Yeah,
Sprite
yeah,
and all
exactly.
these other brands that
Yeah.
it just ends up picking up, and then
Yeah,
you
and-
always see on the back of the thing, owned by Coke.
Yeah, but now
Or Pepsi.
it's become a thing, and I don't think it sort of happened in 2011. All of a sudden, these craft breweries popped up. There'd been craft breweries around all the time, but I think people's tastes had changed.
Well, you
in a
want
sense that
something
people wanted
different,
to try.
right?
Well, I'll try something different.
Yeah.
Look. My father would drink Melbourne Bitter and Melbourne Bitter and Melbourne Bitter at home, and when he went to the pub, most times if you went to a pub, you could. If you were lucky, you had the choice between Carlton Draft and Victoria Bitter.
Really?
On tap.
Which do you want?
Which do you want? But you never went to the pub, which I do now. You go to a pub and you say, "What have you got? Show me your beers.
What do you recommend?
What do you recommend?
I want to try something
Have
new."
you got something local?" And when I'm travelling, that's the thing that I do, particularly travelling in places that are good at producing beer. There are some fantastic craft breweries in America. Every town you go to has some really good craft breweries. In Britain, every village has brews their own beer. And so I always go into a pub and say, "What's your local beer? What's your best local beer? What do you recommend?" I've drunk all of the usual stuff,
It's
and you
almost-
get some really interesting stuff.
It almost feels like the inverse of first world problems.
Yeah.
That it's kind of like first world privilege.
Yeah.
Well, not even privilege, because that kind of obviously has an almost negative stigma to it today, but almost where life is so good now in terms of having access to everything that you require that really your day-to-day decisions can be focused much more on experiences than on where's my next meal coming from.
That's right.
How am I going to survive?
Exactly.
What job am I going to have?
Yeah. And
so
look, if you went down, I don't know what this cost. It's probably $6 or $7 for a can.
Yeah.
For $6 or
coffees.
$6 or $7. Well, if you multiply it up to 24 cans, $30 or $40, you can buy 24 cans of VB, Victoria Bitter.
Well, I think maybe we're moving away from just getting messed up, though, right? Like, no, it's no longer about quantity; it's about quality.
Yeah,
we've made that shift.
It's about doing something different and having different styles available. And look, it's not just beer. I mean, I think a part of it is that people are looking for that. You know.
Yeah. Well, and I almost never buy the same. You can probably see, guys, on the side. The Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
So and my wife made me move these out of the kitchen.
Out of the kitchen.
And they
were going to fall off the top of the fridge.
But you'll almost see that I never buy the same beer twice,
No.
at least when it comes to these sorts of craft beers. One, because it's too expensive to buy them in bulk, so you end up just going in and picking a whole bunch.
Yeah.
And two, I almost go into beer shops now not wanting to buy just 6 of the same thing.
No, give me 6 individual things and try them out.
Is that something weird in your view? Because I think
It
that's
is.
only
Well,
happened in the last 5 or 10 years,
you couldn't do it
right?
up until 5 or 10 years ago.
Yeah.
The best you could do was buy a 6-pack.
Yeah.
And then some of the craft stuff came out in 4-packs. Costed the same as a 6-pack, but you got 4 rather than having to buy 6. And now you can just buy individual cans.
Yeah.
You buy one can for $7, or you can buy 4 for 25, or whatever.
Or 1 for 25.
Or 1 for
That's
20.
horrible. You don't end
it
up
was
finishing.
rat poison. But,
It's just too strong.
yeah, well, it wasn't just too strong. It was sweet and syrupy. It's like drinking shoe polish.
Again, worth the experience.
Oh, yeah, you got to try it once.
Well, that was an expensive mistake.
I think that beer might have convinced my father that he was wrong.
Yeah.
He always used to say that beer, sex, and pizza, you've never had a bad one.
Yeah.
But I think in this case, it was overpriced.
Yeah, what's that joke? What's the difference between sex and pizza? Nothing. If it's bad, it's good, and if it's good, it's good. Anyway, sorry. You can see that the joke's coming out already. It's smutty jokes.
Yeah,
But, yeah, it is interesting. I don't know. It seems to be the same sort of thing with TV shows. Everything is getting... Maybe it's because we have so much choice today too, that you kind of want to go down and choose your own adventure.
You do,
So you get something
yeah.
like Netflix, and I mean, there are things
Well,
that
I think
everyone's
that's the
watching, but at the
case
same
that-
time, you want to
that we've
discover something unique.
We're fortunate in a sense. In Australia, we've had a relatively we've had the craft brewery version of television and cinema in Australia, and so since the 70s, as we were talking about earlier, that there were very few really bad Australian movies made.
But there were very few really good ones made.
But there were a lot of really good ones made, but some of them didn't make the mainstream things. But so we're in that sort of craft, brewery, boutique style thing. Mainstream television, your average commercial television now, is full of 90% crap that's easy to make. So-called
don't watch
reality
it anymore.
television. No, that's easy to make. It's cheap.
I didn't realise Big Brother's still going. I'm like,
But
what?
Big Brother, I am proud to say that I have watched 5 minutes of one episode in the first series of Big Brother about 20-something years ago, and I decided I'd never watch it again because it was...
I can still remember some of the first people on the first
irony
series,
is
but
that,
then my
I know.
my
but
interest dropped off pretty quickly.
The irony is that was almost reality television for a while. It was a contrived situation. You throw 20 people in a house and you just toss them out periodically.
Well, I appreciate it so much more now, sticking with Big Brother, in just what they were trying to do. I think we were talking about going to Mars, right?
Yeah.
And just how
would you live
you
together?
have to sift through. If you're NASA, you've got to sift through all the people that are going to go on the trip and make sure, at least to the best of your abilities, that they're going to get along, because you have no idea really of knowing what's going to happen when so few people are stuck together in a very small space and there's no escape for a number of years.
Yeah.
Let
And
alone
I think
something like 12 weeks or whatever it is.
I
for
think
Big
the
Brother.
challenge with things like Big Brother, though, is that, and look, I'm as your sister is, an addict of watching Survivor. I think Survivor is fantastic. But
What is it up to now? Season 30 or
40
something?
something.
Jesus Christ.
But there've been an Australian Survivor, New Zealand Survivor, and there's probably who knows, Survivor from all sorts of places. But But I think the challenge that the producers have for those shows, when Big Brother started, it was just, just take 20 people and really want them to be...
Well, and it's unique at that point,
and they were
right?
camera candy. We'll have 10 attractive women and 10 attractive men and throw them in there, and that was the thing that would attract people and make it watch, because
and
it was
with
novel.
Crazy backstories.
But then it became, well, what do we do to make it interesting? And then they would, they were clearly setting up conflict by just putting a few lunatics in there.
That was the whole point.
And that was the whole point.
Yeah.
But so that sort of contrived thing for television. But you're getting back to my original point. There's a lot of that television now that is just mass-made and it's crap, which is why we have things like Stan and Netflix and so on that are actually producing really high-quality movies and television because people will pay to watch it.
Yeah.
People will pay $13, $15 a month to watch
nothing,
and have
right?
choice of high-quality TV and high-quality
Comparatively,
movies.
that's, probably what I spend on coffee in 2 or 3 days.
Yeah.
And you're able to get access to an infinite, or close to infinite amount of good
it's
entertainment.
certainly now it's coming out where, unfortunately now, if you want to watch a wide range of good stuff, you've got to have Netflix, you've got to have Stan, you've got to have Apple TV, you've got to have Google Plus, you've got to have... so you're going to end up subscribing to about 6 different things. So you're going to end up costing $100 a month, which is less than what I pay for Foxtel, which is our standard, the equivalent of what used to be called cable TV.
But
It's
Dad,
all satellite.
there are other ways of getting what you enjoy.
I know.
You don't have to go.
But there aren't, because the reason I pay for Foxtel mostly is because of sport.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the trouble, and they're clever. If you buy the cheapest package, it'll include a sports channel, but it won't include the 3 channels that you want to watch. And by the way, they're
Game
on
of
3
Thrones.
separate things.
You remember that?
Yeah.
They were doing that, I think, for a while, right? Upselling everything.
Oh,
And,
yeah.
if you want Game of Thrones.
If you want Game of Thrones, we'll put that on. It's no longer on Showcase. It's going to be on a special channel that you have to go to the Platinum service
Very
to get.
clever.
Yeah, which, of course, they're going to do. But
Yeah, it's interesting. I was watching something the other day where they were talking about the rule of 3 in terms of companies, and how you usually start with, a handful, dozens, hundreds, and then eventually they get subsumed into 3 big companies. I can't remember what the examples were in terms of cars in America.
Well,
it was
cars
like
in
Ford,
America,
Chrysler,
it was Ford,
and something
Chrysler,
else.
and General Motors.
General Motors, okay.
Yeah, and then what happens?
General Motors got Chrysler, at least.
Well,
Ford,
but also what happens is that you get a bunch of smaller ones popping up underneath that, because in order to compete with each other, the 3 big ones have to effectively be making the same cars.
Yeah.
And certainly in Australia. I mean, Chrysler in Australia sort of disappeared, but we had Ford and Holden, General Motors equivalent in Australia, who were making the same car. Your Commodore and Falcon were basically the same car.
Yeah.
And it was, do you want it shaped slightly different, and do you want it to come in different colours? But then you had a whole bunch of people saying, well, Toyota are going to make smaller cars. The biggest selling car in the history of the world is the Toyota Corolla. And that was because people wanted something different. And so and then all of a sudden Toyota is the biggest company in the world. Actually, they're not anymore. They're not the biggest car company in the world. Do you know who is now?
Well, in terms of single brand, or
in terms of value of the company on the stock exchange?
Volkswagen?
No. Tesla.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Although it's crashed recently. I don't know how. Yeah. But when they got up to $1,700 a share,
Jesus,
they passed Toyota.
Yeah.
And Toyota sell tens of millions of cars a year, hundreds of millions probably. Tesla are selling 1 million cars a year, maybe. But
he's a brilliant / creepy, crazy guy.
Yeah.
I love / am scared of Elon Musk, but I'm so glad that the world has individuals like him doing what they're doing at the top of the food chain.
Yeah, we got somebody who just says, his
let's get to Mars.
Yeah. So
what companies do I need to create in order to make life on Mars sustainable?
Yeah.
I'm going to create one that can make, electronic cars and other machines.
And the only reason he did
reusable rockets.
The reason he created Tesla as a car
boring
company was because he knew that was a way that he could get funding back into the company to create better battery storage.
Tesla hasn't made a profit yet, right?
No.
Yeah.
But they keep, it's now the biggest company car company in the world in terms of value on the stock exchange, because people believe in it. And the only reason he created it, I've never spoken to Mr. Musk personally, but allegedly the major reason that he created the company and started to do electric cars was because he wanted to have a way of building better battery storage.
Yep.
And we have I think I don't know whether it's a Tesla company or not, but it's an Elon Musk battery storage thing in South Australia.
Yeah, well, he just effectively said
he did.
You guys had a massive
This
blackout.
is one of the greatest bluffs
I'll fix it for
one of
you.
the greatest political bluffs that fortunately the South Australian Premier didn't blink. He went, okay.
Done.
Where Elon Musk came in and said, yeah, you guys had this huge blackout.
Yeah.
I will build you a battery storage capacity that'll sit in South Australia so that you'll never have a blackout again. I'll build it in 3 months. It'll cost $1 billion and I'll give it to you for nothing. If it doesn't get built in 3 months.
What's the negative side? Yeah.
If it doesn't get built in the 3 months, I'll give it to you for nothing. He built it in 3 months. And the irony is, the day that it went live, there was a power blackout in New South Wales, the state next to South Australia, and New South Wales didn't even know that it was going to kick in and back them up, and it did. And the power blackout lasted an eighth of a second.
Jesus.
And this guy's a genius.
Well, and that's the weird thing. It's almost like you need these people who are ridiculously brilliant, but they end up being incredibly unstable.
Yeah, they're weirdos. Yeah, you want people coming up with just like going to Mars. I'm sure he grew up as a child, going 6 years old, going, well, the moon's been done. That was in my parents' time. We'll do Mars. And he grew up imagining he's going to go to Mars, and he probably will.
Yeah.
Even if it doesn't happen in his lifetime, his company will make it happen.
But it's funny. I also wonder. I used to watch a channel. I think he was called Isaac Asimov, or is
Isaac Asimov?
He's called Isaac Arthur because he's a combination of two names. There's another guy called something Arthur, and he put them together. He's a really, really interesting ex-Marine in the US who's also a physicist and creates all these crazy videos on YouTube about, artificial intelligence, space exploration, where we're going to go. We're going to go to Mars. How come with the Fermi paradox? Why haven't we seen existence of life elsewhere in space yet? But I remember him...
It's too far away.
Yeah, I remember him making a bunch of videos on going to Mars and just how infeasible it is.
Oh, yeah.
And why you would just never do that. In terms of wanting to find somewhere else to live, his thing was much more about you would just create cylinders that rotate that are in space and easily turn those into places to live. You wouldn't populate a huge planet. Again, you need a terraform.
I agree.
First.
I don't know that. Again, I can't read what's in Elon Musk's head, but I don't know that the drive to go to Mars is about providing another place for humanity.
It's just a massive wank.
It is. It's just because we can. It's like, why did we go to the moon? Why did...
Because we wanted to beat Russia and China.
Yeah. It's an ego trip. But...
Actually, it was just Russia back then, right?
It was, yeah. But
China's laughing now.
Yeah. It was an ego trip that was really about saying...
Can we do it?
Can we do it? And what improvements and innovations in science and technology are we going to need in order to do it?
I was watching something recently about that, and they would have reached Mars with a person, it's believed, in the next decade.
Oh, yeah.
If they'd maintained their momentum when they were doing the space race.
The NASA budget in the 1960s was and I don't know exactly what it was, but it was a huge proportion of the GDP of the United States.
Yeah.
It was more than 10%.
I guess it would have been the Cold War and the Vietnam War that kicked in and sort of took the budget from that.
And then it just died in the mid-1970s. And now the budget now is smaller than it was in the 1960s.
In
actual dollars. No, in actual dollars.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
So imagine how small it actually is in comparison.
Yeah.
So...
It's a shame. I would love to see stuff like that happen.
But and that's mind-boggling. I mean, I grew up I'm an Apollo head. I grew up in the 1960s, watching rocket launches and the whole Apollo thing. If we're going to go to the moon, and when I was a child in 1969, when 3 people did go to the moon and 2 of them walked on the moon. We got sent home from primary school in grade 6 to watch it on TV because we didn't have TV reception in schools. This is 60 years ago, well, 50 something years ago now, and so you couldn't watch television in school because there wasn't an antenna. And if there was one, there would have one television connected to it. So there were 800 or 900 kids in our school.
Yeah,
and we were going to
have to be a big TV.
And it was supposed to happen at about 11 o'clock in the morning, Australian time. It didn't happen until late afternoon. Go and watch the movie about that. Another great Australian movie called The Dish, which is about the connection of one of our telescopes in outback Australia.
Parks, right?
Yeah, Parks. And how it was getting that one lined up to actually be able to transmit the...
Because we played a pivotal role.
We did.
Yeah, in the moon landing, because we were on the opposite side of the world effectively and able to maintain communication with the people in the Apollo mission whilst the Americans were on the opposite side.
Exactly. So...
Yeah.
So that's a bit of an aside, but so I was a real Apollo head, and just really wrapped in it. But all of a sudden, it just stopped. Yeah, and he went, "Oh, well, what am I going to believe in now?" And
freedom.
Yeah, freedom. But there hasn't been a sort of science and technological innovation unifying thing before or since.
Yeah,
you can say that. Henry Ford in the late teens, early 1920s, when he decided he was going to make a car that everybody could drive, and then everybody decided around the world, all the car manufacturers that were around went, "Oh, this is a good idea," and so car manufacturing just boomed in the 1920s. But that wasn't an externally imposed thing; that was a purely commercial thing. Of yes, we can do this, so we're going to sell stuff. Yeah. Whereas the Apollo missions was really just about this. There was an idea. And, the world got behind it, literally, even though it was American dollars that were responsible.
You wonder what's going to happen with the, travel to Mars. You wonder if there's going to be a similar sort of space race, or if we're going to work together,
I don't think there will be a space race. I don't think you can afford it. Yeah. Although there are certainly, NASA is looking at it. Elon Musk is not, he's collaborating in general, I believe, but they're not working together. It's not one program. And I'm sure Russia and China are probably looking at it as well and going, well, although Russia doesn't have any money anymore. But
you wonder what's going to happen, because they're probably going to want to obviously do it for capitalistic financial reasons, and you would imagine that's probably going to be mining. But that was that big thing that came out of the Mars series that I was watching recently with Kel. Is
that
we're just going to take our problems from here and probably transplant them there, right?
Yeah.
And initially you're going to have a small group of people where perhaps a lot of the broader scale issues and competitiveness that occurs between countries is not going to exist, but eventually it'll just be subsumed in...
And then there'll be an us and them thing as well. There'll be Martians and Earthians.
Well, what's that? There's a TV series about that too, right? Where you've got the Belters, the Martians and the Earthers, and they're all competing against one another. And it is fascinating to think, where are we going to be in 1,000 years? Are we going to have those sorts of in-group, out-group fighting? But it's just big in the Earth. It's now all of a sudden the solar system, or multiple solar systems.
I actually can't imagine what humanity is going to look like in 1,000 years. The only imagination I have for it is that it is going to be clearly more technological than we currently are, but the population...
But it'll look like us.
But the population will be significantly smaller.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's going to be a population crash
at
some stage. Well, there has to be.
Why?
We can't sustain 7 billion people on Earth.
According to who, though?
Because there is an ambition of almost every population. Every country, every area in the world wants to improve what they're doing.
But you would imagine that
economics meets environment, and
we can't necessarily exist the way that we're currently existing.
No,
but you can imagine all we need to really do is have shelter, food, and water, and we can probably find ways of doing that.
It's going to be completely different.
Existence will be completely different in terms of, are you going to have iPhones? Are you going to be able to just have your big block of land?
It's 7 billion today. In 10 years' time, it'll be 8 billion.
Yeah. Well, I was watching one of Isaac Arthur's things, and he was like, you could eventually have a planet where there's 1 trillion people.
Yeah.
But, this is what it takes to make that planet take place. Because ultimately we don't, 7 billion people, although it sounds like a huge number, it's still only a tiny percentage of space that individual humans are taking up.
Yes,
and so if you can work a way out of building structure and everything like that, and getting resources.
And until we can work out, and really the key to it, people talk about food all the time, but the key is going to be desalination.
Well, he was saying the weird thing was, how do we get rid of the heat? Because all of a sudden we're going to, if you've got 1 trillion people, which is what, 100 times, 1,000, 100 times what we have currently.
120 times.
Yeah, you're going to have a shitload more heat that's created in the environment, in the world from all these people.
Not to mention how much carbon dioxide.
How do you get rid of it? Yeah. Anyway, Dad, we're almost at the end here.
We are. We didn't talk about any news at all.
It's a good episode of the Goss. Hopefully they liked it.
Yeah, the news is just COVID, so you're not interested in that anymore.
I've got a whole bunch here, but we'll have to tackle them next time.
We'll do it next time.
No, anyway, thank you, Dad. We didn't even finish the beers.
We didn't.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers. Give me a little smash here. Oh, cheers, Dad.